Before we begin, take a moment. If you find this story interesting, leave a comment with the number 1 and subscribe to support me. But if it's not quite your style, comment with the number 2 so I can improve and do better next time. Your feedback is my greatest motivation. Hello everyone, my name is John, and today I want to share with you a story about my life. This is a story that I probably wanted to bury forever. But sometimes the truth needs to be told, not to justify, but to become a wake-up call for everyone. Life is not always simple and straightforward. There are moments when we are caught up in temptations without realizing that we are standing on the edge of error. The story I am about to tell is not the story of a hero, but the story of a man who stumbled in his own marriage before temptations that I thought I could overcome. It is my story, a confession, and above all, a hard lesson in honesty and self-control. I am John, 27 years old, born and raised in a small town in Australia. My family was not well off, my parents had to work hard to make ends meet. Due to difficult circumstances, I only finished high school and then had to drop out to work to help support my family. As a child, I knew that I didn't have many options and that my education was out of reach. I don't blame anyone for that because my circumstances taught me that it was my responsibility to support my parents. After dropping out of school, I started working at a small garage in town. At first, I was just an assistant, doing odd jobs like cleaning, arranging tools, and assisting the main mechanic. Gradually, I learned basic skills like changing oil, checking tires, and then repairing engines, brakes, and electrical systems. The work was hard, but it helped me grow up and gradually improve my skills. Although the income was not high, it was enough for me to contribute to taking care of my family. I felt proud to be able to handle complicated problems on cars by myself, and customers trusted me more and more. This garage was not only a place to work but also a place where I grew up, learned, and gradually built a career with my own hands. Every day, facing challenges, I realized that I was on the right track. In early 2013, when I was 27 years old, I married Olivia, my beautiful and talented wife. She is a lawyer, a year younger than me, intelligent and charming. We met through a mutual friend, and from the first meeting, I was attracted to Olivia's confidence and strong spirit. At first, we just chatted as friends, but gradually, through meetings and dates, our feelings blossomed. Olivia has a very profound perspective on life, and every time I'm with her, I feel understood and shared. Although we come from 2 different backgrounds, she comes from a well-off family, while I grew up in a simple and ordinary life. That has never been a barrier. We always respect and understand those differences. Throughout the process of getting to know each other, Olivia has always supported me in my work and life. She is not only a lover but also a companion, always listening and sharing. We have overcome difficulties and challenges together. And it is that connection that helped me realize that Olivia is the woman I want to be with for the rest of my life. After a period of dating, I knew that I had found my true partner. With love and trust, we decided to get married. Olivia's family is very wealthy, completely different from my difficult circumstances. Her parents are successful businessmen, always wanting their daughter to marry someone who is equal in every way. I knew that her family was not happy with me from the beginning, but Olivia fought to be with me. Her love made me feel comforted, although I was somewhat self-conscious about the difference between our families. After getting married, because my family's conditions did not allow it, I agreed to live with my wife's family. At first, this made me a bit hesitant because I was afraid that living with my wife's family would create pressure, but Olivia always encouraged me. She said that as long as we loved and respected each other, everything would be fine. So, I agreed, and we started our married life in her family's large house. However, the differences between the 2 families created challenges that I had never thought of. I always tried to fulfill my role as a husband, but at the same time, I felt lost in my own home. where everything was so strange and did not belong to me. Our married life was really happy at first. Olivia was a thoughtful, intelligent wife who always knew how to make me feel loved and respected. In the first months after the wedding, everything went smoothly. We often spent the evening together, had dinner together, and shared stories about work and life. Although I was a son-in-law, Olivia's care made me feel that things were not as heavy as I had worried. However, that life did not last long. Olivia was a good lawyer, and her work was getting busier and busier. The company often sent her on business trips, sometimes for a few days, sometimes for a whole week. The evenings in the big house gradually became emptier, without the laughter or cheerful conversations like before. My wife's parents were also always busy with the company, hardly ever at home, making the house even more deserted. In that large house, there were only me and Olivia's younger sister, Lily, a young, beautiful, and energetic girl. Although at first, I only considered her as a younger sister. Gradually I could not help but notice her observing eyes. She always acted close, occasionally asking me about life, about Olivia. The questions seemed harmless, but they made me feel awkward because I knew there was something strange behind those questions. Every evening when Olivia was away, I often felt extremely lonely. The spacious house became cold. The smallest sounds became clear, making me realize that I was lost. Sometimes, I sat on the sofa, staring into space and wondering where this marriage would go. When Olivia's work increasingly took up all of her time, I loved her, but loneliness gradually gnawed at me, day by day. And in those weak moments, my sister-in-law's attention became more and more obvious, making it gradually difficult for me to resist. She began to appear more often in my line of sight, wearing revealing clothes, as if deliberately attracting attention. At first, I told myself that it was just an accident, but after many times like that, I began to realize that she was doing it on purpose. I tried to avoid it, convincing myself that I was not allowed to think wrongly, but the emptiness and loneliness grew, and I knew that I was standing on the dangerous edge that just one wrong step would change everything. From the first days I stepped into this house, I recognized Olivia's younger sister, a young, beautiful girl with sharp eyes. Although she did not say it, I could feel her eyes following me every time I moved around the house. At first, I did not pay much attention to it because to me she was just my sister-in-law, a family member that I did not think of in any other way. I knew I was tall and strong, which was probably what caught her attention, but I never let that thought go further. In the first months of living at my wife's house, everything went on as usual. I spent most of my time in the garage, came home late, and only had time to see my sister-in-law briefly during meals or while cleaning the house. But when Olivia started to go on business trips more often, things gradually changed. The longer Olivia was away, the more I felt Lily's presence. It wasn't just because we lived in the same house, but because the way she behaved seemed to have changed. She no longer kept her distance like before. Instead, every time we were home alone, I began to notice that she chose to wear thin, revealing clothes. At first, I tried to convince myself that it was just a personal habit, nothing unusual, but then, day by day, that accident became too obvious to ignore. She appeared in thin tank tops, sometimes a nightgown that barely covered her body. Every time she passed me, her eyes seemed to glide lightly, as if challenging, as if wanting to check if I would react. At that time, I tried to stay calm, reminding myself that this was just my sister-in-law, and that Olivia was still the one I loved, but deep down, I couldn't deny that Lily's presence was starting to cause me to waver. I realized that I could hardly ignore her allure. I knew I shouldn't think about her or let anything happen, but her presence, in Olivia's absence, was becoming an increasingly stronger temptation. I couldn't deny that I was beginning to notice her every movement, every gesture. The internal conflict between reason and emotion, between loyalty to Olivia and my own weakness, was growing stronger. I knew I was standing on a dangerous threshold where one wrong step would cause everything to collapse. One evening in July 2013, things spiraled out of control faster than I could have imagined. It seemed like an ordinary day, but in retrospect, it was the moment my life took a darker turn. Olivia was away on a business trip, as she often was, and I had grown used to being home alone. My in-laws were not home either, and it was just Lily and me in the big, quiet house. We had dinner together, nothing out of the ordinary, just the usual chatter about work and random topics. But there was an odd feeling growing inside me, a hidden tension that I couldn't ignore. After dinner, I went to the bathroom to relax, thinking that a quick shower would clear my mind. I closed the bathroom door, but I was tired and forgot to lock it. All I could think about was getting in the shower and unwinding, not paying attention to anything else. Suddenly, I heard the door open slightly. I turned, and the sight before me made my heart stop. Lily, in an unexpected manner, entered the bathroom. The light reflected on her skin, making every curve more pronounced. She stared at me with boldness, her eyes full of intent. I froze, unable to react. "What are you doing?" I stammered, my voice trembling, trying to keep some sense of reason in this absurd situation. But she didn't respond immediately. She took another step closer, her eyes never leaving mine, then spoke in a soft but suggestive voice. "Do you want to know what my body feels like?" I stood there, motionless, unsure of how to react. My mind screamed to turn away, to push her out, but my body betrayed me. My gaze was drawn to her. And with each step she took, I couldn't look away. My heart raced, my breath quickened, and I knew I was on the edge of making a mistake that could not be undone. "Get out. You can't do this," I tried to say, but my voice was weak, lacking conviction. She kept moving closer until she was right next to me. The light in the bathroom made everything too clear, too tempting to ignore. I felt myself losing control, caught in a storm of emotions I couldn't fight. The bathroom door closed behind her, as though signaling a point of no return. Despite the fear and guilt flooding my heart, I couldn't resist. With the instinct of a man who had been separated from his wife for too long, I couldn't help myself when faced with such temptation. I embraced her, and in that moment, all boundaries between right and wrong vanished. Afterwards, I was overwhelmed with guilt, suffocated by it. I stood there in the steamy bathroom, frozen. My mind blank, unable to process what had just happened. Lily looked at me with satisfaction, a smile on her face as if what had happened was just a harmless game, a small victory for her. But to me, it was a betrayal. I had betrayed Olivia, the woman who loved and trusted me. I had betrayed my own values. My heart was filled with regret and self-loathing, but it was too late to turn back. I quietly left the bathroom, avoiding her gaze. The house felt cold, eerily silent except for the sound of my footsteps in the long hallway. I quickly went back to my room, put on my clothes. But the feeling of guilt lingered, never leaving. When Olivia and my in-laws returned from their day at work, I tried to act normal, as if nothing had happened. We had dinner together, talked about work, and everything seemed calm on the surface. But inside, a wave of guilt and regret was growing stronger, threatening to overwhelm me. Lily, however, was different. She acted as if nothing had happened, more confident and at ease than before. She laughed and spoke naturally with Olivia and my in-laws, as if nothing had changed. Sometimes, her eyes would briefly meet mine, just enough to remind me of everything, making my heart heavier with each passing moment. Every night when I lay next to Olivia, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, staring at the ceiling, the images of what had happened replaying in my mind. I wanted to confess, to tell Olivia everything, but fear held me back. I knew that if I spoke, everything would collapse, our marriage would end, and I would lose everything. So we both stayed silent, Lily and I. Each day felt like a burden. And the guilt grew like an open wound that wouldn't heal. I felt like I was living a lie, still playing the part of the perfect husband and son-in-law on the outside, while inside, I was a traitor. Consumed by guilt and self-loathing. I didn't know how much longer I could endure this feeling, but I knew things would never be the same again. The guilt had eaten away at me, making it impossible to face myself. Every time I looked in the mirror, I was reminded of the mistake I had made. I want to send a sincere message to anyone who may be facing temptation in their lives. Temptation often comes when you least expect it, at moments when you're weak, lonely, or off balance. It can pull you into a spiral that's hard to escape, causing you to lose control in an instant. The most important thing is to remain calm and composed when faced with temptation. You must understand that a moment of wrongdoing doesn't only affect the present but can have long-lasting consequences, destroying the most precious things in your life, family, love, and your own self-respect. I've been there, and I know how difficult it is to shake off the guilt and regret. Remember that self-control is not only a responsibility to others but to yourself as well. Don't let a moment of weakness push you into situations that will haunt you for the rest of your life. The value of a person lies in their ability to recognize right from wrong and know when to stop before things break. Never trade your family's happiness and your self-respect for a fleeting moment of wrongdoing, because once you cross that line, you can never go back. If I could turn back time, I would choose to control myself better so that I wouldn't have to live in torment and regret like I do now. Don't let yourself face the pain I'm going through.